Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The galaxy abandoned humanity. Then we built a nightmare empire. The banishment. The Galactic Council had once looked at humanity with contempt. They had watched Earth grow, evolve, and expand, but their eyes were full of judgment, not admiration. Earth's people were a stubborn race. They fought wars, made mistakes, and still stood tall. After each setback, they refused to obey the rules set by the Council. In a cold meeting room of the Galactic Council, a decision was made: Earth would no longer be a part of the galactic community. The decision was swift and final. Humanity was to be exiled, forced to leave the vastness of space and remain in their corner of the universe. The other alien races stood silent as the words were spoken. The Council believed that without their technology and alliances, Earth would slowly fade into irrelevance. No one took the humans seriously. They thought Earth's fleet was outdated and that their technology was primitive. The Galactic Council saw them as a nuisance, a problem to be solved. They had no idea what they had done. As the message of their banishment was sent, humanity was shocked but not defeated. The news spread across the globe in a matter of hours. People looked up to the stars, wondering what this would mean for them. The leaders of the Earth nations gathered in secret in fear and uncertainty, but one leader, a woman named Captain Sarah Holloway, stood tall among them. "We will not be silenced. We will not be pushed around. The galaxy thinks they can destroy us, let them try," she said, her voice calm yet full of fire. The Council had underestimated the spirit of humanity. No matter how many times they had been knocked down, they always stood back up. Earth's people were known for their resilience, and now they were about to prove it. The human race began to scatter across the stars, gathering what little they had left. They were determined not to just survive in isolation, but to come back stronger, smarter, and more dangerous than the galaxy could ever imagine. Earth's fleet was no longer the collection of outdated ships they once thought it to be. Humanity had hidden their true potential for far too long. In the depths of space, far beyond the Council's watchful eyes, Earth's brightest minds began their work. They started developing new technologies, technology that could change the very balance of the galaxy. Quietly, they worked in the shadows, unnoticed, while the rest of the universe continued with its business. Some humans believed that the best way to survive was to hide, to avoid attracting attention, but others, like Captain Holloway, believed that the galaxy would eventually learn to regret their decision, and she would make sure of it. They were not going to fade into obscurity. They were going to build something strong enough to show the galaxy that humanity was far from weak. The exiled humans didn't just hide in their corner of the galaxy, they adapted. They grew stronger, more resourceful, and more innovative. They found new ways to travel through space, new ways to build ships that could match or even surpass the fleets of the Galactic Council. They tapped into resources the galaxy had never known, harnessing the power of the unknown. The humans had learned to survive in ways that no one else could. There were whispers of strange signals being sent from deep space, of ships appearing out of nowhere, and of unexplained events taking place around distant worlds. Some believed the rumors, while others dismissed them as fantasy. But deep inside their hearts, many in the galaxy began to worry: could the humans really be making a comeback? Could they be building something dangerous, something that could rival the power of the galactic empires? Months passed. The human fleet had been gone from galactic sight for so long that it seemed like they had disappeared. The Galactic Council had all but forgotten them. They believed humanity had given up, that the humans had accepted their fate of exile, never to rise again. But the truth was far from that. In the silence of the distant stars, humanity's darkest secrets were taking shape: ships that could slip through the shadows, invisible to the radar of any alien force, soldiers trained in ways the galaxy had never seen, and a fleet of warships that were unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. The first sign that the humans were more than just a forgotten race came in the form of a small, unassuming ship. It was far from the powerful warships humanity had once possessed. In fact, it was an old ship, one from the early days of their space exploration, but its mission was clear: gather information, find weaknesses in the systems of the galaxy, and learn how to destroy what had once tried to destroy them. The small ship traveled quietly, unnoticed by most of the galaxy. It slipped into territories controlled by the Council, observing, listening, and gathering information. Then, a month after it had begun its mission, it vanished. At first, no one thought much of it. Ships came and went all the time, but what followed was something no one could explain. Alien patrols sent to check on suspicious activity began disappearing. Entire fleets vanished without a single trace, no debris, no wreckage, just silence. The Galactic Council's officials were stunned. They had no answers, no explanation. They couldn't understand what was happening. The fear began to spread among them. What if the rumors were true? What if humanity had built something in secret, something that could be used to take revenge for the banishment they had suffered? Captain Sarah Holloway was waiting for the right moment. She knew that humanity was ready, that the time to act was soon approaching, and that when the day came, the galaxy would be forced to remember that humanity was never to be underestimated. The Galactic Council had thought they were rid of humanity, but they were wrong. Humanity had always been good at one thing: surviving, and now they were coming back, not just to survive, but to take back what was theirs, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The banishment was only the beginning. The Galactic Council remained blind to the growing storm. They had banished humanity and moved on, believing the species was too weak, too divided, and too dependent on the Council's resources to ever recover. For them, humanity was nothing more than a primitive race that had been arrogant enough to challenge the order of the galaxy. Their exile was a lesson, a punishment for their defiance. But what the Council failed to understand was that humans thrived in adversity. Deep in the uncharted regions of space, Earth's survivors worked tirelessly. They had fled beyond the mapped territories of the Council, beyond the prying eyes of alien empires, and into the darkness where no one would find them. They did not waste time mourning their exile. Instead, they turned their sorrow into purpose, their anger into strength. In hidden facilities carved into asteroids and buried deep beneath frozen worlds, humanity rebuilt itself. The old ways were abandoned. The slow bureaucracies of Earth's past were discarded. Now only survival mattered. The best minds of humanity, once bound by politics and red tape, were free to create without restriction. The greatest engineers and scientists worked together in secrecy, their minds focused on one goal: vengeance. Ships, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, began to take shape. These were not the clunky, outdated vessels the Council had mocked. These were weapons built for war, for speed, for destruction. The Council had believed that humanity would crumble without access to their advanced technology, but the truth was far more dangerous. In exile, humans had been forced to innovate, to push past the limits imposed by the so-called superior species of the galaxy. They had discovered new energy sources, new ways to travel, and new methods of warfare that no alien race had ever considered. At the heart of it all stood Captain Sarah Holloway. She had been one of Earth's greatest military leaders, a woman who had fought in the final days before exile. While many in the government had pleaded for mercy from the Council, she had argued for resistance. And now, in exile, she was leading the charge for humanity's return. She stood on the bridge of the newly constructed warship, the Oblivion's Wrath, staring out into the void. The ship was a monster, a beast made of dark metal and powered by experimental energy sources that no alien scanner could detect. It moved through space like a ghost, slipping through enemy patrols unnoticed, striking without warning. "Status?" she asked, her voice calm but commanding. A young officer turned from his station, his face full of quiet determination. "The fleet is operational. Final testing is complete, we are ready." Holloway nodded. Then the first target was selected, a small outpost, barely worth mentioning in the grand scope of the Galactic Council's vast empire. It was lightly defended, a simple trading post on the edge of Council space. No one would suspect that anything unusual was about to happen. That was the plan. The attack came in the dead of night, when the outpost was at its most vulnerable. The Oblivion's wrath appeared out of the void, its dark hull blending into the endless black of space. By the time the outpost's defense systems detected it, it was already too late. A single pulse of energy erupted from the warship, and the outpost shields collapsed instantly, no warning, no chance to fight back. The humans moved quickly, boarding the station with precision. The alien guards barely had time to react before they were subdued. The station's commander, a proud and arrogant member of the Council's ruling race, was dragged before Holloway. He struggled, his face filled with confusion and anger. "Who are you?" he spat. Holloway stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "You don't recognize us." The alien sneered, "You are criminals, exiles. You have no place here." Holloway leaned in, her voice barely a whisper, "We have more of a place than you think." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving the station's crew locked behind reinforced barriers. The humans took what they needed, supplies, data, weapons, and then, just as quickly as they had arrived, they were gone. The attack had lasted less than an hour, but its impact would be felt across the galaxy. When the Council received word of the attack, they dismissed it at first as a minor skirmish, pirates, perhaps, nothing worth their attention. But then more reports came in, more outposts attacked, more ships lost without explanation. And then came the message, a simple transmission sent to the Galactic Council's High Command, a single sentence spoken in perfect clarity: "You thought you could erase us. You were wrong." Panic spread through the Council like wildfire. The idea that humanity had survived, that they had not only endured exile but had returned stronger than before, was unthinkable, and yet the evidence was undeniable. The exiles were back, and they were hunting. Holloway stood on the bridge of her warship, watching as the Council's forces scrambled to respond. She knew this was just the beginning, the real war had yet to start. But when it did, the galaxy would never be the same again. The Galactic Council was no longer ignoring the attacks. What had started as isolated incidents, mere whispers of trouble on the fringes of their empire, had now escalated into a full-blown crisis. Key supply routes had been disrupted, Council patrols had vanished without a trace, and their military stations, once thought impenetrable, had been struck down one by one. The Council had been too slow to react at first, they had believed it to be the work of pirates or a rogue faction. But now, with every ship that fell and every station that went dark, the undeniable truth began to set in: the exiled humans had returned, and they were no longer the weak, desperate race that had once begged for a place in the galaxy. High above the shimmering cityscape of Vale, the Council's central planet, a crisis meeting had been called. The chamber, a grand hall filled with delegates from 100 different species, buzzed with tension. For centuries, the Council had ruled uncontested, maintaining order through fear and power, but now they were afraid. At the head of the room, Chancellor Varkas, a towering reptilian figure with piercing yellow eyes, stood before the assembled leaders. His voice, usually calm and commanding, now carried an edge of unease. "We are facing an unknown enemy," he declared. "These attacks are not random, they are calculated, precise, and devastating. Our ships have been outmaneuvered, our defenses bypassed. This is no ordinary foe." A delegate from the Exivarian Dominion, an insectoid race known for their intelligence, clicked its mandibles. "We have analyzed the patterns of attack. The tactics used suggest a level of strategy and efficiency we have never seen before. Our ships are being destroyed before they can even detect the enemy." A nervous murmur spread through the chamber. A deep voice rumbled from the back of the room: "It is them." Silence fell as every being in the chamber turned toward the source of the voice. It was Admiral Cal, a veteran of countless wars, one of the few who had been present during humanity's exile. He leaned forward, his large, fur-covered hands gripping the table. "The humans," he growled, "they have returned." Chancellor Varkas narrowed his eyes. "Impossible. They were cast into exile. Their ships were outdated, their fleets scattered, they had nothing. Admiral Cal shook his head. And yet, who else could it be? Who else would strike with such precision? Who else would seek vengeance against the council? A cold realization spread through the room. Varkas exhaled slowly, his claws tapping against the stone table. Then we must prepare for war. Far away from the council's debates, deep in the uncharted sectors of space, the fleet of the exiled humans moved like shadows through the void. Their technology had evolved beyond anything the council had ever seen. Their warships, once deemed primitive, now harnessed the power of dark energy, something the rest of the galaxy had dismissed as impossible. On the bridge of the Oblivion's Wrath, Captain Sarah Holloway stood with her arms crossed, watching the holographic display in front of her. Her eyes scanned the latest intercepted transmissions from the council. "They know it's us," said Commander Wren, her second in command. Holloway nodded. "Good. Let them fear us." Wren smirked. "We could strike deeper. The defenses around their core worlds are still weak, we could take out a major shipyard." Holloway considered it for a moment. A direct attack on one of the council's core shipyards would send a message, one they couldn't ignore. But she knew the real war was just beginning. The council was arrogant, but they were not fools, they would adapt, they would strike back. She turned to Wren. "Not yet. We continue to weaken their supply lines, starve them, frustrate them. And when they finally send their full fleet after us." Her lips curled into a smile. "That's when we strike where it truly hurts." Wren nodded. "And what about the message?" Holloway tapped a command into the console. The ship's AI transmitted a simple, chilling message to the council: "You exiled us. You left us to die, but we did not perish. We thrived, and now we return, not as beggars, but as rulers. The reckoning begins." Across the galaxy, that message would soon reach the council's core worlds. The age of humanity's vengeance had begun. The message had reached every corner of the Galactic Council's domain. The words, though simple, carried a weight that sent shivers through the hearts of every species that had once cast humanity aside: "You exiled us. You left us to die, but we did not perish. We thrived, and now we return, not as beggars, but as rulers. The reckoning begins." Chancellor Varkas read the transmission again, his yellow eyes narrowing as he clenched his claws. The council chamber was silent, all the gathered leaders were too stunned to speak. The humans were no longer hiding in the shadows, they had revealed themselves, not as a scattered, defeated race, but as a force powerful enough to challenge the council itself. Finally, Admiral Cal, his fur bristling with unease, broke the silence. "This is not a bluff. Their attacks prove they are not only alive but stronger than before." A sleek amphibious figure from the Ori delegation leaned forward, his smooth skin glistening under the chamber's bright lights. "We should have exterminated them when we had the chance," he hissed. "We were fools to let them live." A murmur of agreement spread across the chamber. Varkas exhaled sharply, silencing the room with a glare. "And now we face the consequences of that mistake." He turned toward the council's intelligence chief, an Avaxi strategist named Silith, whose feathered crest twitched nervously. "Tell me, you have something?" Silith nodded, though her voice carried a hesitant tone. "We have analyzed the attack patterns and traced them back to the uncharted systems beyond the Veil Nebula. These regions were thought to be devoid of habitable worlds, but somehow humanity has not only survived there, they have flourished." The council leaders exchanged uneasy glances. The Veil Nebula was an inhospitable sector filled with unstable space and gravitational anomalies. No known species had ever successfully colonized it. If humanity had built an empire there, it meant they had developed technology far beyond what the council had assumed. The insectoid Exivarian delegate clicked its mandibles. "We must strike now before they grow even stronger." Admiral Cal shook his head. "We have already sent fleets to engage them, and they have not returned. We do not even know what kind of ships they now possess. Rushing into battle blindly will only lead to more failures. Varkas sighed. Then we need to know what we are facing. We need intelligence. Scylla hesitated for a moment before responding. There is one way, we have an agent who has infiltrated the outer human-controlled regions. She may be able to gather information from within. The chamber fell into silence once more. Sending spies into human territory was a dangerous game. If they were caught, the consequences would be unimaginable. But at this point, the council had no choice. Do it, Varkas ordered. We must know our enemy before it is too late. Far beyond the council's reach, deep within the Veil Nebula, the Oblivion's wrath drifted silently through the void. It was one of humanity's most advanced warships, its dark hull absorbing all traces of light, making it nearly invisible against the stars. Captain Sarah Holloway stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the hollow map before her. Reports from various human-controlled sectors flashed across the display. New shipyards were operational, producing vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their fleets, powered by dark matter technology, could move undetected, striking with precision before vanishing without a trace. Commander Wren stepped forward. The Council has received our message, they're panicking. Holloway smirked. Good. Let them squirm. Wren's expression turned more serious. But they won't stay on the defensive forever. Sooner or later, they'll send everything they have against us. Holloway nodded. Then we make sure they never get the chance. She turned to the tactical display, where a new target had been marked, a key supply depot within Council space, lightly defended and crucial to their military logistics. We strike here next, she said. If we cut off their supply chains, we force them into desperation, and desperate enemies make mistakes. Wren grinned. I'll prepare the fleet, he said as he turned to leave. A quiet alarm sounded from the communications console, a proximity alert. Holloway frowned. What is it? A young officer checked the readings. Unidentified vessel, just outside our sensor range. It's trying to mask its presence, but our scanners picked up its energy signature. It's not one of ours. Holloway's smirk vanished. A spy, she muttered. Wren's eyes darkened. Shall we intercept? Holloway's gaze hardened. No, let them run. Let them report back, the Council thinks they're gathering intelligence on us. She leaned back in her chair, a slow, knowing smile returning to her face. But what they don't realize is that we've already set the trap. The war is only beginning, and humanity will not stop until the Council falls. The Council's forces were in chaos. Every strategic meeting, every intercepted report, every whispered conversation among the high-ranking officials of the Galactic Council spoke of one thing: humanity's empire was no longer just a threat, it was a storm waiting to break, and the Council had no shelter from it. In the Galactic Council's war chambers, the situation was spiraling out of control. Reports of missing agents, failed infiltration attempts, and sudden, unexplained uprisings within Council-controlled sectors were flooding in. Every time they tried to act against humanity's empire, their plans collapsed before they could even begin. Chancellor Varkas paced back and forth, his elongated fingers gripping the edges of the latest intercepted transmission. His advisors sat silently around the table, their eyes flickering nervously between each other. The message was short, but it was enough to shake even the most battle-hardened among them. You thought you controlled the stars. You were wrong. Your spies are ours, your fleets are marked, your empire is already crumbling. Surrender now or be swept away in the storm. It was a direct transmission from the human military command, and it was not a threat, it was a warning. Admiral Cal slammed his fist against the table, his claws scraping against the smooth surface. This is unacceptable. We cannot allow these creatures to dictate the terms of this war. Scylla, the intelligence chief, exhaled slowly, her many eyes unreadable. They knew about our infiltration teams before we even deployed them. That means they have spies within our own government. Varkas finished grimly, the silence in the room was deafening. The Galactic Council, the ruling force of the known universe, had been infiltrated. Admiral Cal shook his head violently. We cannot keep sitting here arguing like frightened children. We have fleets, armies, and planets under our control. We strike now before he could finish, an alarm blared through the chamber, a priority distress signal. The council members turned their attention to the holographic display in the center of the room, where a panicked officer appeared, his reptilian skin pale with fear. Chancellor, the core sectors are under attack. Varkas' eyes widened. What? The officer swallowed hard. It's the story, filled with betrayal, strategy, and a thirst for revenge, had reached a critical turning point. Humanity, once banished and underestimated, was now a force that no council or empire could ignore.